This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so for everyone that is new to OCP, welcome to your very first OCP project call. For those that are veterans, you can tune me out for the next 5 minutes or so. The format for our call is fairly simple. We go through some introductions. If there's new people, please do announce yourself. It would be great if you you can right click on your profile and you can edit your name, and it's great if you could put your company name after your name, just so that we kind of get an idea of how many different people are here and how many companies are represented. You can see it in mine where it comes up Archna with parentheses OCP, and then Raul has his, and Rob Bunger has his from Schneider Electric. So it just helps us a little bit as well as the people that are on the call just get familiar with us. All calls are recorded, and at the end of the call, probably within an hour or so, Michael will be taking the call recording and putting it up on the wiki. So we have a record of past calls, and if you have colleagues that are in other geographies that are unable to attend, you can always go back to the wiki and take a look at the calls. And the calls will be our GoToMeeting standard calls, and you'll be able to see the presentation, and you'll be able to see the people that are presenting. So it keeps us having a running record of all of the conversation that's had, and plus also gives us a far reach. This call and this particular sub-project group was born out of a lot of collaboration that was going on between two different project groups at OCP. The first project group was our data center facility group, and then the second one was our ACS group. Our ACS is our Advanced Cooling Solutions group, and there's 3 work streams in there. There's immersion that is led here by Rolf Brink, who's here from Asperitas. Jessica, and I don't see Mike here, but they were heading up the cold plate one, and then Jacob Na from Facebook was heading up the door heat exchange one. And then Brevin, and I'm looking here to see Rob Bunger. There's a bunch of people here that were also are right now leading up the data center facilities group. So this project, this sub-project was born out of a harmonization effort that was going on between these two groups to get our data center facilities very much in line with the work progress that our cooling group was doing. And Mr. Don Mitchell, so graciously raised his hand, and he is now our volunteer lead for this. I'm sure he's going to be looking for some help from all of you, but with Mark Dancy and others here, we've got quite a great turnout. I think, Dawn, you do have a specific agenda for today's call, and thank you so much for sending out the meeting minutes. For those of you that have not subscribed to the mailing list, we'll put a link to the mailing list in the chat. Please do spread the word and let your colleagues know if they're interested in attending. All of the communication is primarily going to be handled through that reflector, through that mailing list reflector. So without further ado, Mr. Don Mitchell, I'm going to go ahead and make you presenter.
I just sent you a text to do that, but Archie, I appreciate the introduction. So I'm a bit of a hybrid here. I'm one of the guys that's fairly new to OCP. Many of you may recognize me. I've been in data centers for about 20 years, starting with a company called APC that became a company called Schneider, worked with Eaton, and now I'm with a company called Victaulic. On a global basis, I'm looking at enabling liquid distribution in and around data centers. And so this fit up with my background. Prior to the data center career, I spent some time living in a submarine, aka a welded pipe. So I've literally looked at pipes from the inside out. And I see a lot of interest here. And I did reach out to a lot of my relationships outside of the OCP community because we will need expertise that was not inherent in OCP. My recollection of OCP when I first heard it getting founded was about 10 years ago by Facebook, that it was all about the rack. And I did not see a role for what I was doing with Victaulic or with pipes and facilities. I'm going to share something real quick if I can. That was what I wanted to share. Hold on a second here. And still learning how to there. Go to this.
We can see your screen, so that's great.
Well, let me go back to the beginning here. How's that? Now, does this?
Yep.
Probably is not going to work. I'm going to just go back to the reduced screen and we'll go from there. Okay. Open Compute or Open for All. As what Archana was leading into, Open Compute mission is, and this was important for me to understand, the Open Compute Foundation is a growing global community with a mission, and we're to design, use, and enable mainstream delivery of the most efficient designs for scalable computing. Again, at one time I thought this was just an IT rack. But as Archana indicated, the program has grown. We have advanced cooling solutions, which to a large extent are liquid-based cooling solutions, although that's not exclusive. And one of the challenges as Open Compute starts looking at ACS is how do you plug in a liquid-cooled solution into a data center? And the industry is kind of struggling with that because we don't have a lot of data centers starting at day one with liquid-cooled only facilities. I'm going to jump real quick to a picture to try to help describe where this group falls in, and then we're going to go back to a little bit more about what the group charter is. As you took a big picture of a data center, and this came out of, I believe, an ASHRAE presentation. And one of the key things I'd like to highlight is in terms of harmonization, I'm not just trying to harmonize what Open Compute ACS team is doing, or Advanced Cooling Solutions is doing with the data center facilities, but I'm seeking very much to harmonize what we're doing with what ASHRAE is doing. There's no point in trying to reinvent what somebody has already done. There's no point in creating new documents for old documents or new terms where old terms exist. So if you're the question you're looking at here, the TCS, DECS, and FWS and CWS, I believe those are terms that are associated with ASHRAE guidance. And while some might say that they have a better term, as much as possible, I'm going to be trying to focus on this. So where are we at here? You look over here on the right and you see a rack. I'm not working on what's inside the rack. That's actually the ACS team. And to the extent that people cluster racks and have say a nested pipe solution that works just with those racks, that's not what I'm looking for. But in terms of how those racks are added to an existing data room or to a facility, or how they interact with the outside world in terms of how does the liquid go from the rack or the rack cluster through the data center and out of the building, those are the areas that we're looking at. So there's a technology, you see I put these little ACF terms here, the DECS, ACS is working on that, and vendors are working on that. So let's take a step back here. I just wanted to kind of give a picture in your mind about what part of the data center we're talking about. And feel free to ping with questions as we go through, and I'll take a pause every now and then. But the sub-project overview, on a most basic level, we're looking, as I said before, going back here, our mission was to develop the best practices and create collaborative documents and common guidelines facilitating integration of advanced cooling solutions into data center facilities. So we're just trying to plug in the liquid cooled IT into an existing data center facility in a manner that is acceptable to OCP and likewise the industry overall. Going back to some of these overviews, we're going to be collaborating on liquid distribution participants. We'll be developing guidance, reference designs, or sharing case studies of where we've practicality or practical solutions that have already existed are working well. Our primary interests in this, minimizing risk, time, and operational impact in the process of installing ACS. One of the key barriers to these advanced cooling solutions is the perception of how do you plug them into a data center that was designed for air. We're looking at standardizing and simplifying guidance along that line. And we're also, there's an aspect of energy efficiency and reuse. And by the way, I'm also a participant in the green grid. And I'm not trying to reduce their, reinvent their world either. But the concept of energy reuse, you'll hear terms called cascade cooling, where you actually can use the waste heat of one product, ACS product, as the supply side of another ACS product and end up with a very efficient solution set. And the concept of energy reuse, one of the key things that drove me into this program is a passion for the concept that we need to be more sustainable in our world. And there's a personal annoyance every time I hear anybody say that data centers consume energy. Data centers don't consume energy. They transition electrical energy into heat energy, but the energy is still potentially an asset. And we're going to look at whether or not liquid and some of these ACS solutions offer benefits not only in just efficiency, in terms of the most efficient way to cool a data center or IT, but we're also going to look at are there ways to actually reuse the energy in a way beyond that which is measured by PUE. And that is happening around the world. And one of my first projects with Open Compute, not necessarily a project, I had an opportunity to speak with Tim Chambers of Cool DC. And he actually has a data center where you take the waste heat from one product, rear door heat exchangers, and he puts that into as a supply cooling for cold plate. And he has the waste heat from cold plate goes in as being the supply cooling for immersion cooling. And then the waste heat from that ends up being somewhere in the 50 to 60 degrees centigrade range, and that offers great potential for energy reuse. Other organizations that I've invited to this, there's an organization called Cloud and Heat that in essence has standardized a variety of products that do exactly what I just talked, taking energy waste heat and actually reusing that. And they are a member of OCP. And when we finish this discussion, we're going to talk about, Archon is going to run real quickly through membership versus participation in committees. But let's kind of move on, and I hate to make this too much of a monologue. Art's going to give me a tag if you're seeing any questions pop up that I should be looking to. Let me see. Was there?
Nothing yet.
Okay.
Nothing yet.
So the scope we're looking at, there's a couple scope areas we're breaking this down. Definition of what acceptance criteria is. What is an acceptable way of distributing liquid? In theory, a garden hose could be used for distributing liquid, but chances are we'll see very few data centers want to plug in a garden hose. So what we need to look at is what meets the definition of a mission critical liquid distribution solution. How do we define scalability and adaptability? Can we add liquid into existing data centers? What are some best practices, case studies, and guidance we can share there? And open technology. We're not trying to look at any one solution set, but we wanted to find guidance in ways that multiple vendors can participate. We're also looking at integration of ACS applications in the DC cooling. We're going to look at, so basically you can take your advanced cooling solutions and you could plug it in to the data center facility cooling, and we're going to talk about or look at how that can be done practically. But in some cases, the most practical solution might be that an ACS application just goes straight out of the building. It does not connect with it as AC cooling. For example, a data center that was designed with Kyoto cooling still may meet the guidelines for OCP ready, but they're probably not, there's no benefit to try to connect immersion cooling in that solution set. So the question would be, can we set up guidance to make it so that you could put in immersion cooling as a standalone loop with a heat exchanger? Could you do that, an external heat exchanger? Could you do that in a way that minimizes risk and simplifies deployment as well as cost? And then the concept of OCP ready site assessment is one of the products that OCP is looking at. Kind of going back to what I said before, I already described this. I just wanted to give you a picture in your mind of what we're looking at. And this is another picture. And you're going to hear me use these terms, ASHRAE W4 and W5, or ASHRAE 1, 2, and 3. And those deal with, ASHRAE has defined standards for the temperature ranges and applicability of different levels of liquid cooling or facilities cooling. And when you get to the higher levels, you can actually take that waste heat, and this is, I believe, a drawing from Noel or Cloud9, Noel Weidberg, and it just kind of depicts the fact that historically we may have plugged these devices into a data center facility, but in all fairness, all they really now, because they're using such high levels of heat, they can go straight to a dry cooler external, or rather than waste the heat, you could use a heat exchanger and possibly use this as a source of heat for water heat for any number of facilities. And there are data centers in the world that are being tied into district heating. And I do anticipate, as the world becomes, if it wasn't for a bit of a hiccup called COVID, the #1 driving factor on data centers right now would likely be sustainability. And this topic here needs to be addressed so that people don't fear the use of liquids where they actually could be highly energy efficient and beneficial. The general concept of taking a reference design, somebody has an idea, in all honesty, these are just pipes that go to racks. And chances are there's a way, in fact, I know for a fact, you can take some standard designs and what the pipe diameters that are needed or pipe preparation that might be needed for a rear door heat exchanger is not necessarily substantially different than the pipe preparation that would be needed for a immersion cooled tank or a cold plate. So what we're going to look at is we're going to be collecting vendor information on all of these in terms of pipe sizes, numbers, diameters, flow rates, and seeing, can we come up with some reference designs, possibly in a Revit format that could be very easily adapted, or at least conceptually adapted. And I do appreciate, I have some very respectable engineers on this call, and I don't mean to over trivialize the issue, but I think sometimes we have to realize, or want to get this to a point where it's not a scary thing for an owner to think, how the heck do I plug it in? And you can actually take reference designs, you can translate those into bill of materials and install them. They can be delivered in boxes that are COVID compliant in terms of you can assemble them precisely with alignment on a site with worker separation. So those would be areas we'll be looking at, kind of taking a different look at this. Some of the things that we're seeing, and I'm going through a very high rate here because I don't want this to be a long call. This is our kickoff. So I could pause here, but I'm going to go real quick to the punchline, and then we'll take a moment to, I'd like to collect some feedback from people in terms of whether or not they see these are tangible. Like any sub-project, if you're going to do anything, you need to give it goals and a timeline, and we have goals and a timeline. We've proposed some work products that this group should be coming up with. One of those work products would be FWS requirements. And FWS technically stands for Facility Water System. That is an ASHRAE term, and some people say, well, what if it's a glycol system? Is it an FGS? Or what if we use some other kind of a liquid in our building? And the reality ends up being we're going to stick with FWS because that's the ASHRAE term, but whatever runs through the pipe can still be a discussion, even using the FWS term. So we're looking at coming up with some guidance, creation of guidance and specifications around the facility water solution set. We're looking at guidance, potentially a white paper on applicability and benefits of liquid cooling solutions. And I'm going to come back to that one. We're looking at case studies. Anybody that has an operating data center that's done a great job of bringing in liquids. We'd like to set up a case study format and start sharing some of these success stories so that people understand that this can be and is a common practice. A lot of data centers, 90% of data centers, 95% of data centers today are not built with liquid deployed at day one. But there are many data centers that are adding liquid as they go along. Those stories need to be shared so that we can learn from them, see the best practice, see some common trends, and also use them for future design. And then tied into that, the concept of reference design development. Is it possible to come up with some reference designs that would provide guidance to the industry? So back to this white paper thing. Of these three topics, the FWS, the case study, the reference design, I think those are very clearly fall under the ACF charter. The applicability and benefits of liquid cooling, there's other people that are making those. So we need to take a look at whether or not we share an ASHRAE document as being guidance that we're recommending, or whether or not there is a benefit to actually having a OCP version that will constantly be needing and updating to align with ASHRAE. And the deliverable goal, what we have is we have a workshop in November. That seems months away. If you look at monthly meetings, that's like 2 or 3 meetings away. So let me pause and catch my breath, and I'd love to have feedback from people in this group. Is this sounding of interest? Someone who thinks it's of interest, please take the mic.
From Germany. I have a research project running a case study for the deployment of liquid distribution in the life of a data center. We have a research facility and an online data center with just this case you are talking about, Donald.
Fantastic.
Very interesting.
Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Ralph from. Oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi, Rolf Brink, immersion lead, and also from Asperitas. I have a question because with the last engineering event that we had a year ago in Silicon Valley, everything was centered around one of the higher urgency elements that all the ACS work groups were looking for, and actually still are, is some kind of a reference around, okay, what do the interfaces look like? It's a very basic, very practical question that nobody seemed to be able to provide an answer to, because we were looking at, we needed a group that would actually focus on what you're focusing on now with the advanced cooling facilities. Is that something that you can put on the agenda to come up with some kind of a prioritized attention, as in coming up with common interfaces, or how do you deal with interfaces that allow the plugging of any kind of rack-based solution?
That's a great question, and so I could dive into it a little bit deeper. I was going to put that kind of under the FWS requirements, but let's kind of talk about what interfaces are. You've got ACS, advanced cooling solutions, and there's interfaces that are required that you're expecting to be plugging in and plugging out on a regular basis. If you had a liquid cooled server, that interface is one that is going to be reused, and its standards and requirements are unique, and in many cases rather proprietary, and are outside of what I see this being done in terms of plugging in. If you looked at, going back to this drawing here,
yeah, so to be completely clear, we're not talking about server connections, right? So we're talking about either an immersion tank or a set of tanks with a CDU, or even a cold plate solution rack based that needs to connect to a water circuit that is in the facility. It's a very simple question, actually, but the answer can be quite complicated because we're talking about a global scale. And it could be as simple as, well, we're using ISO references for metric connections, threaded or non-threaded on the outside or inside. Really, it's something simple like that.
So, again, that connection, in all honesty, in most cases, you're not going to be repeating that connection a lot of different times. So the nature of that connection, short answer is yes, we will cover it. Longer answer is it's a connection that's made once every couple years at the most. People aren't necessarily pulling in their racks on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. And so the nature of how that coupling would work versus, or connection would work, could be very similar to other connections. But the concept of whether or not a thread is acceptable, whether or not a groove is acceptable, or braze is acceptable, or if there's some other kind of connection that outside of what I just mentioned, that will be part of the FWS discussion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Don, there's going to be a situation where the version 3 rack is going to be pulled in and out on a regular basis.
Okay.
And that is an open source design. So we could focus on that as an initial part of this FWS requirement, because it's an open source design, and will be hopefully copied by many. That might be, that's I'm sure already being worked on by the version 3 work group.
So are you seeing a need to create another work product, or leave this as part of the work product that I was talking about before with the included here?
Yeah, hey Don, this is awesome. I absolutely, I think that we're all kind of saying the same thing here, but what you've highlighted there in the FWS requirements is probably one of the most important deliverables from this group. The other goals that are further down there are probably of less impact from my perspective, but I think that your intent is correctly aligned with the need that we've identified in the past, right? Which is literally creating, a speeds and feeds envelope, right, for liquid cooled equipment to agnostically interface with a data center liquid cooling backend. So I think that's a huge deliverable, and I think it's going to be one of the more important things that comes out of this group. So, but I think you've already covered that pretty well in what you have here.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do,
I agree with that.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'd like to focus on this, and just so everyone knows where we can continue the discussion. But this is going to be the next step here. We're not going to be, for the purpose of this call, we have too many people with too many agendas on this call at one time. What I am looking for is the call to action. So I'm going to work with Archna on how to set a spreadsheet out that will basically be a list of participants and what your contribution interest level is. And I have this WPC, WPR, work product creation, or work product review and edit. I know some people on this call said, I don't have the time to create or spend hours, but there's some really smart people on this call that I would love to have come back in and review what we've done. I definitely we need resources to do the work product creation, because if I did all the work product creation, it might look a lot like a Victaulic document, and I don't want that to happen by myself, okay? So that's where we need balance and checks and things like that. So we're looking at these, as we look at these calendars, the FWS requirements would be one area of interest. Whether or not there's interest and the energy to create a white paper, or if people know of another white paper that we think is being generated, say by ASHRAE TC 9.9, I'd be very interested. For those, just as a reference, back to Rolf, he has a fantastic paper on this topic that ties in directly to asparagus. I really enjoyed the paper. There are some proprietary aspects of that in terms of terminology that pulls away, but that paper kind of exists already. We could take what asparagus has done and try to vendor neutralize it in terminology and such, but most of it's just physics. There's not a whole lot of issue there. I'm just saying that that could be a product here. Case study input, there's a lot of, all we need to do is come up with a standard format there and then go solicit companies that we know actually have done this and share their case studies. I think every case study out there, every example, if people say, hey, it's working for me, is something that's worth looking at. And so that's not maybe not a lot of work, but it's may take some work. And the reference design development may be a longer push, and we'll see where that goes. So back to what's going to happen, the output of this call is somehow I'm going to want to populate this spreadsheet. Archana, you have any insights on how to do that most efficiently versus everyone sending me their, I can send it out to everyone on the call and they can all send it in, I can cut and paste it.
Yeah, no, the way that OCP tends to operate is we use the Google suite of tools. So we could set up a Google Doc or a Google Sheet, and that way anyone can have access to it, or you can have people just come in and comment, and then you, Dawn, can have edit access so people can add their comments, and then you can, you know, edit the spreadsheet as you feel. So there's two camps. Some people like just having everyone come in and edit. And it's really hard sometimes to manage that because we've got such a large group. We've got almost 50 people on this call. And it becomes hard, especially if you're not a Google subscriber, because it comes in as an anonymous input. Or you get this really cool icon that's an icon of an animal that's attached to whenever you log in. So it might be better just to have comments only, and then you can edit the spreadsheet. And if you are adding a comment, please add your name after it so that we can actually credit the comment to you. So that's probably the easiest way. And then that way everybody online can see the progress and view to see how the, you know, the spreadsheet or the document is evolving.
So Archana and actually everyone on this call, I had heard of wikis before. I've seen Wikipedia and I've done that. I've never created a wiki before. Now I have a wiki under my name that I still have to learn how to use all the tools. I play with Google Docs a bit, but I'm more familiar and comfortable with Excel. What I'd really like to do is to make this program successful. What I'm going to do after this call is send an email out to everybody that was invited and suggest, and I'm going to have a link to the wiki and the spreadsheet there. But for those that aren't comfortable with the wikis and aren't comfortable with Google Docs, they can send me just where they want to fall on this, and I'll cut and paste it to get this started. I really need support. I really want to make this a good program. I don't want to have people say I'm not going to join it because I don't know how to spell wiki. Okay. Any questions or comments? And I guess one of the things that I don't want to railroad this through. Is there anyone who's thinks that we haven't covered the categories, or there's other categories that we should be looking at? I know the concept of connectors came up, and I added that to the FWS requirements, but it may evolve into its own section depending on how challenging it ends up being. Are there any other work product areas that people think or need to be addressed under this sub-project?
I think the other thing, Don, is the integration of other cabling within the reference designs for pathways. That we're also, I know we have the connectivity of liquid pipe work, but that's also got to be aligned with the connectivity of network and power connections to the equipment. So yeah, we need to just make sure that we're always working in alignment with the other connectivity to the rack or tank.
I saw that, however, as being the data center. I mean, what we're already doing with connecting racks doesn't, from the cabling perspective, doesn't change when we go to advanced cooling solutions. But what does change is the nature of how we pipe them. However, I guess what I'm saying is, is that something I should be pulling into this charter, or is that something that should fall into another group under DCF?
No, I think it's covered under the FWS. I would have thought if we're giving guidance around how that pipework is distributed within the data center, then should we not be considering how the other cabling of the racks is also aligned with that? I'm just thinking, are we going into too deep? But
I'm laughing because there are people that reach out to me periodically from cabling manufacturers, and I go back and I respond to them. I'm the other kind of pipe, as in the one that's made out of copper or steel or stainless or any number of products. Okay, but let me put that on. I'd like to discuss that offline with you, unless there's I know that needs to be addressed. I'm still struggling with whether or not it falls into the category of what things I want to bite off early. But if there's a group does that make sense?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, this is Rob. Yeah, I agree. There might be just some interesting things to discuss with regards to just, high power, bringing high power into small places like racks, and maybe it's not a reference design or a full study, but I think we should make a note and at some point discuss it. I think it makes sense.
Hey, Don, John Bean here. I assume within the scope of this, we would include things like instrumentation, monitoring, and control as well. It's just not going to be, plumbing and cabling centric, right? It's going to look at it a little bit more holistically and include that kind of thought, or not?
Yeah, I love having you on board, John. So that may be an area that could you write up a summary of what you would recommend on that? Because that's an area that I think you have much better focus and awareness of than I do, and we can see.
That's also where you get an interface with Redfish, right?
Yes. Yes, I could write something up on that. No problem, Don.
So this is Austin here. I do know at one point there was an effort within the ACS group specifically to try and harmonize data center facility management features across the different ACS subgroups. I don't know what the current status of that effort is. I think it kind of runs parallel, John, to what you just described. It probably belongs in this group because it kind of reaches across all the different subgroups. But I'm not sure what the status of that effort is. Has any progress been made there to kind of harmonize the telemetry requirements and facility management aspects of the different liquid cooling groups?
Yeah, there was an attempt made to have a look at the Redfish systems, the Redfish to get harmonized on Redfish inputs. We never really got to an actual synchronization effort. To be honest, I don't think it's. I think we should also apply a little bit of focus here for the high urgency stuff, because knowing by now how long it takes to get stuff organized with a community effort, putting too much on the list will probably result in spending a whole lot of time on not achieving any results, right? So I think getting some kind of a priority list of the stuff that we should be really focused on today, and the stuff that could potentially wait until a year later, then address when it becomes appropriate to address, right?
I think that's wise. I agree with that. Yes, I think it needs to exist somewhere, but I do agree with you, right? I mean, I think the immediate need for work product to come out of the FWS portion as it's currently described is extremely high, and so I wouldn't want to paralyze that by trying to tack too many things onto the end of it. So I agree with you.
And there's also a logical order in here, right? So because it doesn't make any sense to try and harmonize management systems if they're not able to physically connect to each other yet. So let's make sure that they can literally mechanically interact first and then come up with the proper way of managing that, right?
Yes.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. Of where the physical connections are, and then be able to. So Austin, just to respond to your point there, that the ACS are aligned with the ASHRAE redfish. The idea is to take it one step further and put some more sensors in directly for liquid, and align it with add those on to the OCP redfish, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
So that's something that needs
yes,
to happen.
I hadn't seen debates in a while, and that's very much on me. So I appreciate you bringing me back up to speed there.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. There's a lot to do in the space, right? And I agree with Rolf, but having a priority list would be great, right? And making sure that we're not dropping anything that we should consider as we're start ticking the boxes and start delivering.
I greatly appreciate that perspective. And one of the things, I don't want to be rejecting anything. I actually launched this with things that I saw had potential to make progress by November. And I'd probably take the white paper off the table for something by November. But I think we should be able to make some sort of progress, or we need to make some sort of progress on the, and when I say the November, in November, and Archie, you can jump into this, but we're going to have a workshop. And by November, what I'd like to do is advance a certain number of these projects to the level that they could merit discussion in a workshop and have some form or function around them that would be beneficial to a workshop. And that's a lot of work between now and November. So I may take the white paper off the table unless there's somebody who's passionate about the white paper, focus on the FWS requirements, see what we get in the way of case studies, and then if I have additional resources, look at reference design and development. And a lot of this also depends on the interest factor of the attendees. If I get a large number of people saying, hey, I think I can jump in with case studies, it makes it a lot easier to do case studies. And the people that I'd be expecting there, I'm going to be reaching out to owners of data centers. They have one and they're willing to publicize it. That's a very achievable delivery and deliverable in a short period of time. Okay. If they're not willing to publicize it, it's not worth talking about. Reference design, I can see that. I'd love to talk to some of the MEPs online and see what they would see as being of merit there. Not trying to trivialize what they do with real designs, but trying to, is there something that could be done for a starting point? And there's a couple MEPs that I'd love to have sign up and say, I'd like to do content or work product creation for this category. But the brunt of the focus between now and November needs to be, at least my opinion, and I'm presenting this. Sometimes I make things that sound like statements and they're really questions. So let me rephrase this. Is there a general agreement or any opposition that the focus, one of the first focuses should be the FWS requirements, including connections? I don't know if that's good or bad. Maybe I need to rephrase the question.
Yeah, that's good.
No,
that's good. Don't worry.
100% agreement, buddy.
Thumbs up, Don.
You've got an active audience. When an active audience shuts up, they're listening to you.
Yeah, we have multiple white papers already, so basically we should focus on the real stuff, right?
So for the purpose of this call, if there's any other items that people want, and going back to what I think I just heard, is we're going to create a list of work product items, and that will include facility management solutions, and will that be in our backlog of work. And people can start, if there's a group that wants to start moving on that, that would be great. It is not my area of expertise, so I would want to have someone else kind of heading up that group. When I say group, we got sub projects and we have groups under sub projects. But Ash, right now, Archnet might be a good time to talk about participation in OCP. Who can, what are the restrictions, what are the requirements here? Archnet, do you want to cover that a little bit?
I can. So first of all, thank you everyone for attending. We are very excited to see almost 50 people on this call from all walks of life. And I personally am excited when I see new people on our calls. So thank you for that. Let me just ask a couple of housekeeping questions before we get to the membership and the participation side of this. Originally, we were thinking about hosting this call every 2 weeks. And that was just, I think, Dawn and Brevin and I and Rob Coyle just kind of brainstorming along with Mark Dancy. Do you think that that is still the frequency? Or would you like to meet more frequently given all of this, momentum and excitement?
I think, but going on the MDC sub-project, it started off weekly, and then it moved on to sort of 2 weekly. So I think to get momentum, it might be worthwhile doing it every week if you can get the attendance.
So,
all right. So what I heard is possibly start weekly and then maybe go to bi-weekly as people see fit. The other option is that we could do this weekly and just kind of alternate work streams, Dawn. So once you get your priority list of things that people want to work on and we have smaller groups, the first 15 minutes, 30 minutes can be for everyone. And then those that are only specifically working on work stream A can work on that and everyone else can drop off. And then, kind of do that on a weekly basis so that everyone's time is used valuably, right? That's an option. So think about that and noodle on that for a little bit, everyone. The second is, does this time work for everyone moving forward? So we're talking Tuesdays at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, at least for the U.S. coasts, and I have no clue what time it is in Europe right now. So
that's for European time. It's 5 to 6 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
For
so does this time work?
Yeah, at least for us, it works.
Okay. So Dawn, I think we might have. I'm sorry, one more time.
The time is fine to Europe.
Okay. So Dawn, I think we have our answer. Maybe we do this on a weekly basis and then we can scale it back like, Mark Dancy suggested and then see if we have the need to meet less frequently.
Just for the all-inclusiveness here, are you expecting interest in participation in this group from Asia? Because this time will definitely not work very well for Asian time zones. Just want to put it out there.
Rolf, you're absolutely correct. What we have done for other work groups is we've alternated time zones. And so say we do it at 8 a.m. Pacific, this week, then, next week we do it at, 6 p.m. Pacific, which I think is weird for Europe, but it's like 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. in Shenzhen and Beijing and, Singapore and that part of the world.
Yeah, so to be completely honest, I actually bent over backwards in the beginning of the immersion group to try and accommodate all time zones because there seemed to be interest, even though it was not actually written down as interest. And eventually it turned out there was hardly any participation from the Asian area. So I would actually, if you don't mind me recommending this uninvitedly, but I would recommend just looking at it. If there is participation, then to take action towards those time zones, and if there is no interest no interest shown, then I wouldn't even bother.
Well,
yeah, I think it's a bit of a time. It's not just the time difference that we've noticed. It's also a bit of a language barrier there as well. So what I find happening, at least in some of the newer other projects, is that people tend to listen in on the project calls after the fact because it's easier from a recording perspective for them to pause, use Google Translate or some translate feature, and then hit play again. So I find that happening. Plus, I think they rely heavily on the meeting minutes because then that's easier for them to, to understand.
So kind of summarizing what was just said. I think number one, I will be hosting another meeting next week. The frequency of the meetings will be a continued topic, and also the attendance of the meetings will be a continued topic. If people are not actively interested in developing or content, I would probably have a more frequent meeting with those that are interested in working on developing content and reviewing content of specific work streams. So we'll go for next week, and tentatively I'll probably plan the next couple weeks from my time zone, but I don't want to overtax people with meetings that I want them to be at meetings they need to be at, not just every meeting, because so I'll try to focus on that. In regards to time zones, I have a global role. I've done calls with people in Singapore in the past couple of weeks, and in fact, last week I was on calls with Singapore, Ireland, and everything else. But to the point of convenience of people on this call, unless I hear a large body of people from Asia or somehow connect with those that are wanting to be participant on this, we're probably not going to accommodate the Shanghai time zone in the immediate future. We'll see where that goes.
That's fair, Don. That's completely fair. So we'll go ahead and set up the series for every week in this time zone for the time being, unless there's a overwhelming interest from Asia, and then we can pivot as needed. And then I'll set it up for an hour.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I can set it up for an hour, and that's not a problem. And you can shorten it and lengthen as needed.
So having said that, we're pretty close to the hour mark.
Yeah, so with 5 minutes left here, let me just do a quick screen share. So I'm going to grab the screen back from you, Dawn. And let's see. Can you guys see my screen? So this is the OCP Tech Week. It is on the OCP website under events. So if you go to events and you go to Tech Week, this is the first event that's there. If anyone does want to get caught up on what is going on in the immersion work stream or in the data center facilities work group, all of our virtual summit content is also available. So if you go here, click on it. I do believe you have to register, but the registration is completely free. You can go and see all of the sessions that occurred in the Advanced Cooling Solution work track and in the Data Center Facilities work track, and you can get caught up. It's all videos and presentations, and you can download the slides and such. So that's a little bit of background on how OCP works. We're pretty much transparent. Like I said, you can go here to the Data Center Facility group under projects, and this particular project, Advanced Cooling Facilities, is here. You can see it here, and the wiki, you can get to the wiki from it here, and you can subscribe to the mailing list. And like I was saying earlier on in the call, the mailing list is going to be the primary form of communication in terms of what Dawn will use to communicate agendas and Excel spreadsheets and whatever else. Now that's broadcasted to the entire group. If you do have smaller work streams that do develop out of that, Dawn, then we can figure something else out for those smaller core group of people that might be working on each of the work streams that you decide. The wiki, as Don was saying, he's going to become our resident guru in a few weeks. It's here as well, and all of the meeting details are in here. We'll put all of the work in progress that's here. Once the work streams get developed, we'll put that in here. All the recordings from the past calls will be posted here. Any notes and presentations and anything that the team brings to the table, brings forward, we'll also put here. Like I said, we use Google Notes and Google Suites and Google Docs as a repository, and it's just easier for us because we can set up links to those things here, and it's just easier for everyone to access pretty much all around the globe. I know Asia has some issues with Google, but they seem to be able to work around it with their VPN, with their corporate VPNs. So that's a little bit on how this particular project will be set up and where you will find the recording after this call. As far as membership goes, OCP is not a pay-to-play membership. Our observation level is $2,500. That's an annual membership. That is a corporate membership. So if someone joins, anyone in their company all across the world can join in any project calls, in any events, is eligible to contribute. Contributions is a sacred word at OCP. It means something different than participation. Participation is attending our calls, it's getting active in our community, it's chiming in, it's providing feedback. Since everything is recorded, we're not expecting anything proprietary to be stated on our calls. We don't have any passwords, as you just realized. When I took you through our website, you can go in and everything is available to everyone for download, including our specifications and our white papers and reference documents. They're all available to everybody, entire public, free of charge. Our membership, as you start to get in the higher tiers, there are requirements of your time and resources, and that is why our membership is actually inverted. A silver member is 60, whereas a platinum member is 40K. And again, these are annual fees. The idea behind the inversion is primarily that our platinum members really dedicate a lot of time to OCP. They contribute specifications, they contribute software, they contribute white papers and case studies and benchmarking. They help sponsor events. So in the pre-COVID days, when we would be having this first initial meeting, possibly face-to-face, we are a nonprofit, so we'd be looking around for a venue, and a lot of our platinum members do offer us their corporate facilities for hosting such events. And so that's where there's a 3-event requirement. There's a 2 contribution requirement from our platinum members. Whereas if you're a community level member, you're just observing, you're participating, you're attending, but it is not, there's no requirement in terms of how much you contribute. With that, I'm at 9 o'clock and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I will point you to our contribution database. And this is where all of the quote unquote contributions come into place. You can see there's specifications, there's white papers, there's videos, there's design collateral available, there's embedded software, and you can go in and download it directly without any fee, without any passwords or anything. We also have a marketplace here, and the marketplace really showcases our products. The difference between the green and the red, the green and the gray emblem on the left hand, on the top of your screen is the green is everything is open, meaning design files and specifications. The gray is the specifications are open, And then the OCP ready really alludes to our facilities. And this is exactly what the data center facility group has been working towards for the past 2 years, is they have been setting up assessments to make a facility ready to use OCP solutions. So whether it's OCP racks, you know, any kind of solution like that. And you can watch these videos. We have videos and we have, you know, documentation here on exactly what it takes to make your facility OCP ready and what it takes to make your products OCP accepted and OCP inspired. If anyone has any questions, you can always reach me directly. I will publish my email and information on the mailing list reflector. Otherwise, you'll be hearing from Dawn for sure within the next couple of days, and then you'll be getting an invitation for next week's call at the same time in the same place.
So Archana, I will want to talk to you separately. There's some people that are in a retired status that are actually contributing to this. Would they be required to be, can they participate at some level for less than $2,500?
Yes, so if you are retired, you can become an OCP member as an individual. And if you do become an OCP member as an individual and you're not representing a corporation or a company, that membership is completely free. If you are, and I heard a few academics on this call as well, if you are part of a research facility or a university, or if you are part of a, I think it's like a testing facility, like you know, a national labs, or you know, I think there's a few laboratories out there, Lawrence Livermore labs, those kind of labs. They're also, all of their corporate memberships are free as well. So anybody that's part of a research facility, a test facility, or a academic university, for them, membership is free.
One thing I would say is I'm not, I do appreciate the funding of OCP, and as part of this role, Victaulic became a corporate member, community member, excuse me. And that having been said, I definitely want solid contribution. If you're someone on this call that doesn't think a corporation is going to back them, let's get into discussion. We'll find out what this takes, and it may take $2,500. It may take $100. It may not. But I need to run your case study by Arch and find out what's there. Yep. I'm not promising anything. I just don't want people not calling me because they don't have $2,500 in their pocket right now.
Yeah. So for those individuals, they can just go under membership agreement and fill out an individual membership form. For those that are interested in filling out a $2,500 level, either talk to Dawn or myself, and then we'll walk you through it, or you can just go online and sign the membership form.
If you look at the corporate members, however, it's an impressive group. Okay, so from a company,
our directory, our directory is here, and you can take a look and see who's all part of it.
And
so
anyhow,
anyways, yeah, any questions? Yeah, please do reach out to us.
I'll resend the invite for next week, and we'll also be sending a spreadsheet for who wants to participate in whatever category. And the membership's not closed. If you know people that would be interested in participating, I'm definitely interested in getting good quality input. This needs to be a global, to get global agreement. It's got to be more than just one or two people saying something smart. So we want to get as much as we can. So thank you. And appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Don.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Don.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Don. Nice work.
Thank you, Don.
Yep. Good job. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great night.
Thank you, everybody. Good job, Don. All the best.
Yeah, thanks, Don.
Bye.
Thanks, Don. Well done. Thanks, Archana.
Hey, Don, before I